Hello everyone, this is Christopher Small. I'm here, Law Firm Marketing Mastery. I've got Jim Hart on the line from the Hart Law Firm, and today we're going to talk a little bit about marketing a law firm in the right way. So I am totally stealing this introductory question from a podcast that I listen to, but this guy always starts with, so who are you and what do you do?
Well, that's a pretty good question. Thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me. So my name is Jim Hart. Obviously, I am a family law and divorce attorney in Cary, North Carolina. Cary is a suburb of Raleigh. Yeah, so I've got a small law practice, me, a paralegal, and I have a contract attorney that works for me, and we do pretty much just divorce. So that's kind of who I am, what I do.
Okay, all right. So tell me a little bit more about the genesis, if you will, of your law firm. You know, how'd you get to where you are today?
Well, that's a great question. I'm one of those people that when I went to law school, I knew I wanted to start a law firm, and I don't know if that came across when I interviewed with firms, you know, when you do that in law school or not. But I didn't get a job out of law school. And I really wanted to start a law practice. I went to Ohio State, I'm a Buckeye, and originally followed my wife at the time, my girlfriend, to Florida where she had a job. She was a year ahead of me in law school. Went to Florida. I worked at a firm for a couple months. I then went to the public defender's office where I worked for about a year and got a lot of good trial experience. And the entire time I was doing that, I really wanted to start a law firm. That was always my goal. But I was getting a lot of pushback from my wife, who was a little nervous about that, didn't necessarily want to take the risk of starting a law practice. She had a good job with a firm, and she was happy there. And so at some point, I finally convinced her that that was what I was going to do. I think I spent about a year writing a business plan. And I started my law practice in Florida. Was there for 4 or 5 years, and we decided we wanted to start a family, so we moved to North Carolina. I had to take another bar exam, and so as soon as I passed the bar exam, I opened up the doors to my law practice here, and I've been doing family law ever since.
Okay, did you have a network at all when you moved to North Carolina? Did you have, or were you starting from scratch again, or how? What was that process like?
Well, yeah. So basically, what I did is when we were trying to figure out where we were going to go, we didn't necessarily know that North Carolina was where we wanted to be. So we literally went out and bought from at the time Borders a book called The 100 Great Places to Raise a Family. And so we kind of flipped through that book, and the Triangle region here in North Carolina was always listed in the top 10 places to be. And since both of our families are from Ohio, but we didn't want to move back there because it's just flat too cold.
Right.
We ultimately settled on North Carolina, and I flew up here several times to interview with firms, to talk to other lawyers, to try and start building a network. And so I already had some people that I knew once I got here, but I mean, it was a handful of people. It wasn't a whole bunch. And actually, the attorney that I share space with right now, and this is a complete coincidence because this is I've moved around a couple times before I got to this spot that I'm at now, and have been here for several years. He was one of the attorneys that I had met with when I originally was trying to figure out if we wanted to move to North Carolina. So, but that was a complete chance. And yeah, so I had a little bit of a network, but nothing much to speak of.
Okay, I want to dive into that a little bit more because I'm always interested in the kind of networking aspect of things, and I think that often when you're doing it, it's hard to explain to people that are trying to figure out how to do it well, right? So, let's talk about like this one attorney in particular that you were referencing. What kind of, just from start to finish, step by step, what was that process like of reaching out to him? What was the first meeting like? just give us a step-by-step how that relationship was created, and then anything that you did to kind of promote the relationship or build the relationship.
Well, I don't remember exactly how it initially started, but here's what I do know. When I made the choice to come up here, I basically said, okay, I'm flying up to North Carolina, and I'm going to be there for 3 days or 4 days or however many it was. I booked a hotel, I booked a flight, and so basically I made that around a time when I know you're not really fond of these, but there was a bar association meeting that I decided I was going to go to,
right.
Just to meet people, to do nothing else but to meet
Sure.
people and figure out if these were people that I wanted to practice with, and so I went online. I wanted to make a switch to personal injury, which in hindsight I realized was a bad decision because North Carolina has terrible personal injury laws. It's very difficult to have a personal injury practice here. So I reached out to other personal injury lawyers, and Kevin was a personal injury lawyer. He was in a practice with, at the time, he had a law partner. He is no longer in that practice with that law partner, but she was the one that I actually met with when I initially came up, and they started talking to me about working for them, and I was going to do a lot of marketing and helping their firm that way while I was studying for the bar. And then ultimately come on as an associate was the idea, but they didn't want to pay me the salary that I wanted, and so we kind of parted ways. But I did come up and I met with her, went out to lunch with her. I think one day we had a beer one night, and I met with Kevin as well. But to be honest, when I finally got here in 2010. I don't think Kevin actually remembered who I was, so I'm not sure that's a great story, but that's why I say it's just kind of ironic that it happened that way, because he did ultimately remember who I was, but I had so much interaction with his former law partner that he had some things going on in his life too at the time that he didn't remember a lot about me. Sure.
Okay, that's great. No, I think some of these stories are sometimes some of the better stories, because all we ever talk about and focus on, I think a lot of times, are the ones that work out perfectly, or the ones that produce the huge results. And I think it's important that people understand that you're going to have to go out there and take some chances, and that sometimes relationships aren't going to work out, or they're not going to work out at the beginning, or maybe in the way that you think they were going to when you started. But if you don't get out there and do it right, nothing is ever going to come of it. So I think that's a great story. I'm always interested in that, because that's, for me, it's not that it's a hard thing to do, to go out there and kind of meet people and network, right? But it's certainly one of the less comfortable things for me to do. I would much rather sit here behind this computer and type away forever.
You and me both sometimes.
Yeah, but I think that's a great story. So let's talk. I want to talk a little bit more about this process, the North Carolina process. So when you moved up, what were some of the things that you focused on to kind of get the business off the ground? What kind of things did you do?
Initially what I did is I kind of waited until after I finished studying for the bar exam to start building a website. And I did that because I was spending, I did get a job, a non-lawyer job that I was working at while I was studying for the bar. My wife actually took the bar ahead of me, and I missed the cutoff for the bar exam, not realizing that the cutoff for July was like January 5th or something, and so I didn't even know that. So I went online to start applying, and it's like, oh, well, this sucks. I have to wait till February now.
Right.
So but anyway, so I was working a non-lawyer job at the time. I was doing a lot of networking that way, and as soon as I finished the bar exam, and mind you, at the same time, my wife was pregnant, and our son was due to be born in June. So I took the bar exam in February of 2010, immediately started ramping up, building a website, starting to go out and network with people, looking for office space, things like that, all with the hopes that I was going to pass.
Right.
Mind you, I thought for sure I was going to fail.
Right.
And with the baby coming, we were going to be in some serious trouble if that happened. But I did not fail. I did pass, and the day after I received my results, I went in and gave my notice to my job, and had office space the next week, and was off and running from there.
Okay, so what were the how did you get your first clients? There are long-term marketing things and there are short-term. What are some of the things that paid dividends for you, relatively quickly?
Well, I did a couple things. The first thing I did is I took every single divorce lawyer that I knew in Raleigh, or that I had met over the course of the past couple of months, to lunch or coffee or whatever, invited them out and just picked their brain, looked for resources, looked for ways that I could help them, and so that's one thing I did. I won't say that generated a whole lot of referral business because frankly they wanted to keep the business for themselves, but it is a good way to learn about the law and about the practical aspects of running a divorce law firm here. The other thing I did was, I've always been a big blogger. I started blogging. I started writing articles. I started looking for, at the time, search engines, it was a little bit different. It was more keyword intensive. SEO wasn't so much about content the way it is today. If you had good keywords and you were doing backlinking and guest posting and things like that, those are the things that generated traffic to your blog. And so I was focusing a lot on that, and I did use Google AdWords to some extent. The other thing I did, and this is a way that I really learned a lot about the law, and I recommend that any lawyer that's going out and trying to start a practice do this, is I wrote a how-to guide to divorce in North Carolina, kind of an A to Z guide of what you need to know about divorce law and how to find a good lawyer for your case. And that is what I promoted with my Google AdWords ad. So I had my Google AdWords, and still to this day goes to a landing page that promotes this guide. People can sign up for it. They have to opt in. That's the only thing they can do on that website. There's no reference to my other law firm website at all. And then after they do that, then they get into a follow-up sequence, and that's where I get most people that call me and schedule appointments with me from there.
Okay. And is that something that you did relatively early on in the creation of the North Carolina firm?
Yeah, I had actually been doing that in Florida, and it was working really well for me in Florida.
Right.
And so I basically changed. I had to rewrite all the law to be North Carolina law, and and change some other things. But I basically changed the title, changed the law, and put that guide out there. And it's had 5, 7, 10 iterations since then. I'm constantly changing and updating it.
Sure.
But that was a system that was working for me really well in Florida, and I basically took that system, implemented it into North Carolina, and it worked just as well. So I immediately was getting calls.
Great. Oh, that is outstanding. So it's kind of interesting. You've had this opportunity in a little bit of a different way than I have, but you've actually been able to kind of open a law firm twice, right? And you've been able to use the lessons learned from the first experience to better the second experience,
yes.
Right? What are a couple of the things that you did differently, with the second firm that you would have wished that you would have done with the first? Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense, and that is a fantastic question. I'll say the first thing I did is I spent a lot less money the second time. I don't have firm letterhead. I spent like $700 on firm letterhead when I opened my first firm. Thinking that's important. We have to have that. It has to be, white glossy with, raised script and all this stuff. Nobody, cares at all about that stuff. So I did not order letterhead. I've got a template in Word, and I put my letters right into that template, print them off, and I get this fancy letterhead from other lawyers, but in 3 years since I've been practicing, not a single person has commented on my letterhead. The other thing I did is I did my entire website myself, and I know that maybe that was a mistake, but I just looked at it last night, and for the vanity keywords, which you don't really want to focus too much on vanity keywords because they're they're difficult to rank for, but I'm number 2 in my area for the vanity keywords.
That's great.
And so I rank very well for that. Now it's taken a while to get there, but I did that all myself. When I had my website in Florida, I paid somebody. I paid a lot of money to have somebody else do it for me. And what I found is I ended up doing a lot of the work anyway because I was writing all the content. They just kind of put the template together and then charged me an arm and a leg to host it every month. So I didn't want to do that. So I just focused on the content. Let me see. So, but I would say that the biggest thing probably was not to shell out a whole lot of money in expenses for the firm. And only to spend what I take in. I don't use any credit cards for the firm. With the exception of my first month rent, I have not charged a single thing to the firm. Whatever I bring in that month, that's what we spend. And I think that's something that a lot of attorneys, maybe lose sight of. They forget about the fact they have to pay taxes and pay themselves a salary,
right,
and things like that. And it's very easy to look at that next shiny object and put it on a credit card and whatever. But I have not taken any debt with the second firm. I think that's a big. Somebody gave me that advice once. Another lawyer gave me that piece of advice, and I kind of followed that with me when I started in North Carolina.
Great. That's awesome. That's fantastic. What? Hope you enjoyed the interview. There's still about 18 minutes left. Actually, I cut it off at this time because I wanted to leave some of it for the people that are really truly interested in kind of getting into this and learning more about starting a law firm. To see the rest of the interview, all you have to do is go to lawfirmmarketingmastery.com/Hart, and there'll be a sign-up sheet. Just put your name, email address in there. You'll get the rest of this email. Then you'll also get weekly tips and kind of insider news from me, things I don't share on the website, things I don't share in these podcasts and these interviews. So if you want to get that information, go for it. And remember, it's lawfirmmarketingmastery.com/Hart. Thanks again for listening or watching or reading. I'm Christopher Small with lawfirmmarketingmastery.com. Hopefully you'll go and get the rest of this interview. It really was great. And I will talk to you soon.